Hello everyone, my name is Vash and today we're going to be looking at posts from r/ProRevenge. Let's get right into it. So this happened in 3rd grade. There was this kid by the name of Ryan. Ryan and I never really got along because of arguing we had. One day after school, my sister came to me crying and had a big bruise on her cheek. So I asked her what happened. She answered with, "Someone is bullying me at school." When I heard those words, my blood boiled in rage. I asked her to tell me who was bullying her, but my sister responded with, "I don't know what his name is," so I told her to show me who was bullying her tomorrow. The next day I got up and was ready for school. I stayed close to my sister the whole morning just to make sure no one would mess with her. Then she spotted the bully. I couldn't believe it. It was Ryan. I was enraged further, so I told her, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." I arrived at class and Ryan sitting next to me. He had the actual nerve to sit next to me. The teacher had a assignment which included stapling our work together. So as soon as it was my turn to staple my work, I smacked him in the face with the stapler. He fell backwards, hitting his head, and I continued to beat him with the ruler until the teacher pulled me away from Ryan. Long story short, I went to the principal's office, and Ryan never bullied my sister ever again. Goodness, last time I hit something with a ruler, that shit broke. That man must have got a beating of his lifetime. Note 1. This story was told to me by a friend and is about her father. I won't be able to answer many follow-up questions. It takes place around 2005. I believe the story to be true, but can't verify it, of course. Note 2. This happens in Sweden, where there's no at-will employment. Once an employee is past the initial 6-month probation period, you can't fire them without a cause, which also requires an established paper trial. Note 3. I am not a native English speaker, and professional terms may be wrong. I am happy to take any corrections. So my friend's father, since retired, was a mechanical engineer. He was around 55 when this happened, and very experienced in his field. In fact, he had some skill set that were close to unique to the extent that you might be able to replicate them, but at an extreme cost. We're talking multiple people from multiple companies from multiple countries taking weeks, if not months, to get up to speed with specific projects to do the same thing. He was also a no bullshit kind of guy who did his job. Did it well, but also pointed out problems and expected others to point out problems to him. He was extremely solution oriented and had no time for office politics or keeping a positive attitude at work. Basically, your everyday grumpy old engineer who really knew his thing and always ready to help if you asked, but not very forthcoming in team building exercises and so on. He also ran his own business on the side, doing minor projects and so on. As was required by his employer, he had reported this and was sure to not cause any conflicts of interest. So his employer knew and accepted this. He was considered a valuable employee and got several awards that he cared little for, but anyways, during his many years with this employer. By all accounts, they paid him well, respected his knowledge and accommodated his style, and he returned the favor by working hard and making sure to mentor younger and newly employed engineers to make them effective coworkers. Then his firm was acquired by a larger firm, and a new management team installed. Initially, everyone was promised that things would remain the same, but with the new management came a new office culture. The new management pressured for unpaid overtime, and a more American corporate culture with cheering and clapping and so on. He considered it extremely cringe and refused to participate. His status as a long-standing and knowledgeable employee kept him safe for some time, before the new management realized that resistance to the new culture centered around him and started pressuring him to play along. When he did not, they turned increasingly hostile, realizing that he held a lot of soft power in the company, having mentored a large participant or percentage of the engineers in resistance to their leadership centered around him. They started ordering him to work overtime. He answered that he was on time with this project and that if they had identified an emergency requiring overtime, they would have to bring it up with the union to negotiate the overtime and make sure it was an actual emergency. The contract with the union said no overtime unless in an emergency. They tried to force him to participate in the cheering and clapping by making it mandatory for him to attend and yelling at him to participate, and he did, but so unenthusiastically that the event turned even more cringe and people started laughing. The workday turned more and more hostile, and he knew that things would come to head sooner or later. Being an experienced engineer and knowing how to document things, he already had his ducks in a row. Then it finally happened. They caught him answering an email from his side business on his work laptop, brought him in and fired him on the spot for theft of company resources. He sat at the conference table and looked at 3 managers in the eyes, after the other, and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" They all said, "Yes." "Are you really sure you want to do this?" He was escorted to his desk by security to leave his phone, his badge, and his computer at the desk, and then escorted out. Once out of the building, he phoned his union representative, who immediately canceled the firing, claimed there was no just cause, which meant that it would go to the labor board for arbitration. You see, the company had an IT policy that it was okay to use the company laptops for personal business, including a side business, as long as you were on a break and compliant with IT security protocols, and the company was aware of and had approved of the side business. And he was on a break, of course. He had his declaration of a side business, signed by his former manager, and the IT policy available, and sent both to the union representative. Then he called his lawyer and asked him to send the pre-prepared cease and desist on 2 patents he had held, patents that were not that significant and nothing he could make any serious money out of, since they were mostly for very specific things used by the solutions he designed and used at his employer. But still, he had to bring them with him into the employment, allow the employer to use in exchange for a slightly higher pay, all duly documented in his contract, of course. Then he went home for some vacation, intending his side business. He was always a man to prepare and had enough money saved up to last him for a good time, to the extent that he considered retiring entirely. My friend said that he had 2 job offers with competitors that had looked to sniping him for some time within the week. Basically, as soon as they learned he was available, he was gracious, but declined, but offered them to consult with his side business. Now that he had the time, which they eagerly accepted, at twice the hourly rate he had made at his early employers. His colleagues started ringing the day after for advice. Since the projects he had managed could not go on without him, he was perfectly polite, but denied any information and help, since he had left everything he had with management and to contact them, as he was no longer employed there. Several clients that phoned his private number were told the same thing. Since his private number was not on a public registry, he suspected that both colleagues and clients spent some time and or money to find it. This happened a few times, and the next week HR phoned him and stated the firing had been a mistake and he was welcome back to his job. He again politely declined, since that he awaited the labor board's decision, but until then he was happy to consult for them. At 6 times his hourly pay, after taxes and administrative cost, of course, after a few days of wrangling and trying to negotiate, they had to accept. And then he sprung the patent issue on them, forcing them to pay for those 2. Less than 2.5 weeks after being fired, he was back at his desk. After roughly 3 months, the firing came on the labor board. The employer stated that they believed they had handled the issue correctly, but were still willing to offer my friend's father his position back in the interest of goodwill and reconciliation. My friend's father and the union simply stated that he was now employed elsewhere, his own company, and no longer available. The labor board ruled in my friend's father and the union's favor, and he got the normal damages: 3 months pay damage and 24 months pay severance package, including pension and of course the lawyer cost of the union paid by the employer. According to my friend, her father continued to work there until he retired, working 20 hours or so per week and 10 to 15 hours for other companies, making a pretty penny, continuing to charge them 3 times what he charged their competitors as an arsehole tax. The managers were not fired, but they were moved into their own group apart from the rest of the department when it came to bonus calculations and the cost of her father's consultancy fees and the cost of the labor board arbitration were budgeted there, meaning they were constantly over budget and thus ineligible for bonuses for several years, which was a decent percentage of the incentives at that company, making at least one of them quit. My friend also said her father usually met any management complaints with a big shit-eating grin, all while saying, "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" After that? Alright, I think that's gonna wrap up this video for today. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all those beautiful, nice things, and don't forget to eat dinner.